Hi guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Brittany. In today's episode, we are going to be covering Vampire Diaries Season 5. This is a really hard episode for me to do because I actually watched Season 5 a really long time ago, maybe at least 5 months ago. So I had to really do a lot of research just to kind of make sure that some of my notes that I took were accurate and that I was covering kind of like the really big things that happen in Season 5 so that I could obviously do this episode some justice. And so I do want to set the expectation that there are a lot of little things that I won't be able to cover in this episode because I want to make sure that I can keep this episode under 30 minutes. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. So for our top 5 moments, our first moment, Stefan is trapped in the safe in the water. We know that they have defeated Silas, kind of. We know that Stefan has gone to drop the safe into the water, and what we find out that it is actually Stefan who is trapped in the water, and he is drowning over and over again, and he keeps thinking about Elena and Damon coming to rescue him, but Elena and Damon, they're dating, they're enjoying their relationship. They know that they haven't heard from Stefan in a while, but they're obviously thinking that he's upset about them being together, and so they aren't really giving it too much thought, but he's constantly thinking about them coming to rescue him just because he is really in a horrible state right now. Like, he drowns and then he comes back to life because he is a vampire, and the same process repeats, and so he's probably died over 1,000 times for quite a while. So he definitely was going to have some mental issues and trauma once he was rescued. And so one of the big things with Stefan being in that state is that he was constantly struggling with turning off his humanity because that was going to be the only thing to help him get through it, because he wasn't going to feel the feelings that come with drowning, with coming back alive and then panicking and all of that stuff. And so turning off his humanity would make that trauma that he was experiencing better because he wouldn't feel anything. And so now that we know that Stefan is in the safe and Silas is out free, he's running around, he's actually playing mind games with everyone. And we do have him at some point forcing Elena to attack Damon, and he really has to like talk her into not trying to kill him. And I think they're able to realize that, hey, why is this happening? And then they eventually realize that, Stefan's missing, we need to go find him, that sort of thing. And so what happens is Tessa ends up rescuing Stefan. So they go to the water, the quarry, and they are able to find the safe. It's empty. There's a dead body, so that means that Stefan has fled. They don't know where he is, and he has actually been rescued by Tessa. And what she does is she links Silas and Stefan together, and this is so that Silas can't manipulate people because he is using his mind and his psychic powers to terrorize everyone in Mystic Falls, at least within this gang, so that he can get what he wants. And what we learn through a series of different events is that Tessa is looking for an amulet that will help enhance her powers, and we know that Silas is looking for something else during this time. I can't recall what it is, but they are basically looking for two different things. And when she's at this dance or something like that, she ends up dancing with Silas, thinking that it is Stefan, and he's trying to get information out of her. They have knocked Stefan out of play. He comes back after having his neck snapped, I think. He's able to rescue Tessa. We also learn during this time the story of the doppelgangers and how they came about. So the first set of doppelgangers is from Tessa's timeline. She was supposed to be married to Silas, but he betrayed her with her servant Amara, and he ended up taking the immortality spell without Tessa. And so she was really upset about this. She felt betrayed. She killed Amara so that Silas would have to spend eternity without Amara. And so what Silas is looking for, he's looking for a way to end that immortality so that he can be with Amara. And so what we learn is that the doppelgangers, because of this initial situation, they are always fated to be together. So this means that Stefan and Elena are fated to be together because they are doppelgangers. And so what we do eventually learn throughout this season is that this is actually not true. The doppelgangers are not really driven together. They just somehow kind of like end up together, and they're self-fulfilling this prophecy, but they don't actually have to be together. And so this is something that comes up, and it's used to scare Damon into thinking that his relationship with Elena is not secure because she's supposed to be with Stefan. And so obviously we learn that that is not true. Going into our second point, Bonnie is dead. So we know that the girls were supposed to go to college together, so it's just Caroline and Elena at college. They have a roommate who is taking Bonnie's place. Her name is Megan, and she is killed. I think her body is either thrown out of a window, or the assumption is that she jumped, but they understand quickly that she was killed by a vampire. And so what we noticed before Megan's death is that I think Caroline and Elena are maybe a little bit suspicious of her. They just have questions about her, and they know that they need to be very discreet because they are vampires. She's not, and so they don't want their secret to get out. And so what we learn after Megan has died is that she knew Elena's dad. Elena's dad was a doctor, and later on in this season, we learn that Elena's dad experimented on vampires. And so what we find out is that Megan's death ends up being covered up by a professor at that school named Wes, and he is also working with vampires, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And so what this leads to a little bit later on is Jesse's death. And Jesse is someone who was interested in Caroline. He kind of was in the wrong place at the wrong time, got turned into a vampire, and then he was experimented on, and he ended up being killed when he was trying to attack Damon. And so what happened was he tried to attack Damon. They couldn't get him to stop. And then because he had this virus in him that made him want to kill vampires, they couldn't get him to back off. Elena had to kill him. And then Caroline is really upset by this because she feels like Elena is basically giving up on all of her principles and doing the right thing because she's put in Damon first. She believes that they could have done more to stop the situation without killing Jesse. And so I just want to go back to Bonnie. So we know that they are at the school, Elena and Caroline, and what we know is happening is that Tyler can see Bonnie because he can see ghosts, and so he knows that she's dead, and he is writing the girls letters, and Bonnie is basically telling him what to say in those letters so that they know that it's from her. And so what happens is that Damon is later forced to tell Elena that Bonnie is dead, and so they end up having a ceremony for her, and this brings Tyler back into the picture. I can't recall why he left, but he's officially back at the school. He's trying to fit in, but he's really struggling with something, and so this leads to him and Caroline breaking up, and he is committed to going after Klaus at this point. And so what we have happening later is that Caroline sleeps with Klaus, and she does just like in the woods, they're hooking up. He is applying pressure to her, as they like to say, and she only agrees to this because she thinks that she's never going to see him again. Obviously, we know that that's not true. And anyway, what happened is Tyler later finds out about this, and he's really upset. And then one of the other things that we have happening with Bonnie is that she actually becomes the anchor to the other side. So what we know is that Bonnie has figured out that if she becomes the anchor, she can basically come back to life. And so she is willing to do this, and she goes to Tessa, I guess, for help. And Tessa needs the female doppelgangers in order to do this spell to make Bonnie the anchor. And so at this point, we have learned that Amara is still alive. She's crazy. She has issues. We have Elena, who needs to be part of the spell, and then Catherine. And so what we have happening is that Bonnie is made the anchor, but then Tessa tells her after the spell or transition is completed that every death has to pass through her, and we learn that this is what drove Amara crazy because when she was talking to herself or whatever, she was seeing the dead people who had to pass through her, and she was going crazy over that because each time that happened, it was really painful. And so now we know that Bonnie has to experience this. We do see these different scenes throughout the season where she realizes that someone has died because they appear in front of her in awkward situations and she has to help them transition. Going into the third point, Damien and Enzo's history is explored. We have Wes kidnapping Damien and he's holding him in the cell, in this dungeon, basement, whatever. And we have Stefan who's dealing with his trauma after he's been freed from the safe, and he is working with Catherine and Caroline to get through his fear of whatever the safe has brought out in him. And so having Caroline help him with this is obviously a little bit questionable, but this actually brings them closer together just because, she looks like Elena. Him and Catherine do have their own history and stuff like that. And so they end up sleeping together, and Catherine starts thinking that they have a future together. And this is problematic because we know that Nadia is Catherine's daughter, and Nadia is around Catherine because she's trying to build and develop this relationship with Catherine. She's trying to convince her, I guess, to leave with her or something like that, but she wants Catherine to focus on her. And now that Catherine thinks that she has this chance to be with Stefan because Elena is with Damien, she wants to pursue this, and she's kind of pushing Nadia into the backseat, and Nadia doesn't like this. Going back to Damien, we learned that he was once held captive in Mystic Falls with Enzo, and they were experimented on by Wes's family, the Whitmores. And so what we have happening is that Enzo was captured first, then Damien came there, and they were getting like a very small amount of blood to keep them kind of not dead, but in a weakened state. And so Damien and Enzo made a plan that Damien would take Enzo's portion or ration, and that would help him build up strength so that when they got the opportunity, they would attack West and whoever was working with him so that they could escape. What happened was Damien was able to escape, but in the building that they were in, it caught on fire, and he could not get Enzo out before the house was going to kind of like blow up. And I don't know if he was in danger of being caught if he didn't leave or something like that, but he ended up leaving Enzo there. And I think Enzo died. Obviously, he came back to life, and so when he came back to life, he was still held captive. And so Enzo has actually been held captive since that happened, and that may have happened maybe back in the 40s or 50s or something like that. So he has been tortured and experimented on for a really long time. We also have Elena earlier in the season developing this friendship with Anne. He is a Whitmore, so he kind of has this prestigious status at the school kind of because of the school being named after his family. And so he learns about what happened to Damien and Enzo and how his family is involved. And this leads to Elena being kidnapped because I think somehow Aaron and Elena end up in the dungeon where Damien is, and then he's learning all of this, and then Elena gets kidnapped. And so what we have happening is that Wes wants to inject Elena with the virus that will make her kill vampires. She's rescued, and then what we have happening is that Damien tries to break up with her because he feels like she's forced to accept his bad behavior and his bad habits because she loves him, and she's making excuses for him, but she kind of refuses to let him go through with this breakup. Then what we have happening is Damien later gets injected by Wes with the virus, and now he wants to kill vampires. And then Wes is able to trap Enzo and Damien in a house together, and he has them basically, I think, stuck inside the house. I don't know if he has like a spell on the house or if he has people stationed outside, but basically Damien has to feed on Enzo at some point, and so this is obviously a bad position that they are in. Going into my fourth point, Catherine hijacks Elena's body. So Catherine at some point had taken the cure, and now she had the cure taken from her by Silas, so now she's human. And now that she no longer has the cure, one, she doesn't have her vampire skills. Two, because she no longer has the cure, she is aging very rapidly. So she's slow and she's aging to her true age, which means that she will probably die at some point because she is so old. And so being human isn't fun for Catherine, because she's very slow, and they had this really good scene where she's acting out and playing up the fact that she is now slow. And we know that Nina Dobrev does her best work as Catherine because she just pops into this sassy and very captivating character when she's on the show compared to Elena's personality, and so I really love it when she's playing Catherine. We also have Catherine at some point being in the situation where she's not well. She's in the bedroom, I think, at the Salvatore mansion, and Elena ends up being alone with her, and they're speaking, they're talking about something, and I think Elena is trying to forgive Catherine for something, which is a horrible decision that the group made to let Catherine and Elena be alone together because Catherine is able to use this moment to take advantage of Elena and kind of jump into her body. And so we have had other scenes that happen throughout this season where a normal person, someone part of the gang, their body has been hijacked by a traveler. And so now we have Catherine in Elena's body, and Nadia is the only person who knows. They then eventually rope in Matt to do their dirty work because Catherine needs to act like Elena so that she can convince the group that she is Elena. We have these few funny scenes where Catherine is kind of going in and out of character as Catherine and kind of jumping into Elena's character, and she's obviously so bored by having to play Elena because her personality is so different, but she is able to convince the group that she is Elena. And so what we have happening is that because Matt is giving them all of the information that they need for her to pretend to be Elena, we have Tyler overhearing Nadia compelling Matt, and he knows that something is wrong at this point, and so that causes a whole lot of issues. And then what we have is Damon and Catherine talking. Catherine is Elena, obviously, but he doesn't know that Elena is actually Catherine. And so we have Catherine breaking up with Damon as Elena, and she really breaks his heart. She is not easy on him at all. And so he really struggles with this breakup, and we see that Catherine is really enjoying playing with him and toying with him. And this causes Damon to go off the rails, and he ends up killing Aaron. And this is a huge problem because Elena was obviously friends with Aaron, and she would not be happy that Damien has done this. We also have Caroline and Stefan eventually figuring out that Catherine is Elena, and this happens when I can't recall what happened just before this scene, but we do have this moment where Caroline and Stefan are at the Salvatore mansion, and Caroline is talking about this text that she got from Matt, I think, and it says help K, and so they figure out that the K means Catherine, and they're able to figure out that Elena is actually Catherine. And then this leads to Nadia being bitten by Tyler. She has a werewolf bite, so she's going to die. We have Damien killing Wes, and what happens is I think Catherine is looking for Nadia or something like that, and she discovers that Wes is dead, and then she realizes that there's like these vials or something like that in the area where she finds Wes's body, and she injects herself with the vampire killing virus, and it has been enhanced to contain werewolf blood so that it's stronger. So basically, she is trying to give herself protection if everybody comes after her. And so what happens is Nadia is still suffering from the werewolf bite. She can't be healed. She dies. And then we have Catherine with the gang, helping Nadia transition because she has to transition through Bonnie. And so she says her goodbyes and stuff like that. And then the gang uses this moment to stab Catherine so that she basically gets out of Elena's body. And so during this time of them realizing that Catherine is really Elena or Elena is really Catherine, they have hidden Catherine's real body, and Nadia and Catherine were trying to find her body so that they could complete the transition. I don't think they were able to do that, and so this causes Catherine to go to hell instead of the other side because of her taking the virus. I think that just makes things a little bit more complicated for her. Going into my fifth point, the travelers bring back Marcos and cause chaos. So the travelers need doppelganger blood to bring back Marcos, who is their ruler, but they only need one doppelganger of each gender alive. So they of Silas, Stefan, and a guy named Tom Avery, who is a paramedic and a doppelganger of Stefan. They need one person alive. The same thing for Catherine, Elena, and Amara. Obviously, Elena is the only female alive at this point because I think Amara has been killed, and then obviously Catherine was killed. And so we have Stefan and Elena getting captured by the travelers. They are drained of their blood and they end up being rescued by another traveler named Maria, and she's connected to a guy named Julian who had previously inhabited Tyler's body at some point, and so she's concerned about him because she doesn't know where he is, if he's safe, that sort of thing, and so she ends up helping Stefan and Elena get away. And we also have twins Liv and Luke in the mix. They are witches and they are trying to stop the travelers from what they are doing. And so Liv introduces herself to the gang. She is working with Bonnie to get help and kind of learn how to be a witch, but she is basically pretending because they are there to achieve a certain purpose. And so what is happening is that because the travelers want to bring Michaels back and they need certain things to happen in order for that to happen, what they are doing in bringing Michaels back is basically reversing spells that allow the supernatural beings to exist. And so as a result of all of this happening, the other side is collapsing. So that means that people are being sucked away. It's not like this peaceful place. Heaven or whatever is being terrorized by this thing that is kind of taking them away from heaven and it's not supposed to. So what this leads to, at some point we have Stefan and Enzo getting mixed up, and Enzo is out for revenge because when he was held captive, he connected with this woman named Maggie, and she was the one who really kind of helped him survive that because she was kind to him. And so when he is free, he wants to find her, and he ends up taking, I think, Bonnie and Elena captive, and he gets into it with Stefan, and Stefan ends up killing him, which is obviously going to cause some friction between him and Damien because Damien and Enzo are friends. And as a result of the travelers completing their spell, they end up taking control over Mystic Falls, and they have travelers jumping into the bodies of the residents of Mystic Falls, and so they don't really know who is a traveler. They're just thinking that these are the people that they've always been, the regular people. They don't know that they've been hijacked in terms of their bodies are now occupied by travelers. And so what we have happening with the other side collapsing and the travelers completing their spell, we have the supernatural beings losing their powers, so the rings stop working, the witches can't do spells, that sort of thing. And this is happening, this is affecting Mystic Falls. There is like a barrier that is protecting Mystic Falls, and if they are outside of that barrier, the supernatural beings will still have their normal powers, but once they enter Mystic Falls, they can't have their supernatural powers. And then what we have happening is that Liv and Luke, I think they are trying to leave or get away or something like that, and they are stopped by Caroline, and they need the twins to help them because they have magic powers. And so Luke is killed by Caroline because they refuse to help the gang do what they need to do in order to stop the other side from collapsing and bring back their dead friends. And so Luke is killed, and Liv is forced to do a resurrection spell, and she's even motivated to do it more so because she wants to bring back her twin brother. And then I talked about how we had Tyler's body being hijacked by Julian, and eventually Julian is forced out of Tyler's body, and Stefan is killed by Julian because Julian learns that his girlfriend or whatever, Maria, was killed because she was helping Stefan and Elena escape. So now we have Luke is dead, Enzo is dead, and Stefan is dead. And at this point, we know that Bonnie is still working to figure out how to bring the dead back, and she ends up having to work with Silas, and he agrees to basically help her by, I think, helping her with the spell that she needs to do in order to allow these dead people to come back to the land of the living. So we have Stefan, Damien, Alaric, Enzo, Luke, etc., who are the people that we need to come back, and Lexi as well. So what we have happening is that a lot of people are able to quickly come back from the dead and be alive again. So we have Stephanie who gets out, Alaric, Enzo, I believe, and Luke. And so Luke goes straight for his sister. He sees that she's struggling with the resurrection spell. I think she's bleeding from the nose and really weak, and he tells her to stop, but she's like, no, I have to keep going because obviously people are depending on her. While we have this happening, just prior to this, I think that we had Matt and maybe Tyler setting up a gas leak in Mystic Grill. And we have Damien and Elena driving a car into Mystic Grill so that it blows up. And the reason why they wanted this to happen is because the travelers' bodies, like the bodies that they left to inhabit the Mystic Falls residence bodies, those are being held somewhere. And so early in the season, Damien and I think maybe Angel or something like that, I'm not quite sure, they found those bodies, moved them, and they were using this as leverage over Michaels to get him to do what they wanted him to do. And so he is the one who tells them that the doppelganger fate or whatever prophecy isn't really real. It's just something that they were telling everyone to kind of make people buy into it or something like that. And so Damien and Elena, they blow up Mystic Grill, they die, and so they are also able to come back through Bonnie to the land of the living. And so we have this moment where we see that they are trying to keep Silas from coming back. They are also trying to make sure that everyone gets back within the time frame that they have. And Lexi realizes that the more people that pass through Bonnie, it's weakening her. It's like affecting, I guess, the strength of the spell. And so they basically need to make sure that the right people are getting out. And so she sacrifices herself, I think, to make sure that Silas or Marcos, one of them, isn't able to go back through Bonnie because it just defeats the whole purpose of them trying to get rid of these bad people. And so she sacrifices herself, and the person that they're looking for is Damien, and he's nowhere to be found. And I think he's off helping somebody, and so he doesn't get back in time. And so what we have happening is that Damien comes to Bonnie just too late, but then we have Bonnie, I think, telling Jeremy that she was never able to come back to the living, and so that she was going to be stuck on the other side. So what we have happening is that Bonnie and Damien are stuck together, and the other people, once they realize what's happening, they assume that Bonnie and Damien have died. And that is where season 5 ends. Alrighty, so to wrap up this episode, I've already watched season 6, and so I'm really happy to be doing an episode talking about everything that happens in season 6. I'm really looking forward to talking about the bond between Damien and Bonnie. I think that they have a really cool season 6, and so I'm just really excited to talk about that. I really love Bonnie's fashion in season 6, and so it was just really, I feel like it was Bonnie's best season look-wise, and so I'm just really happy that we get to see more of a Damien and Bonnie connection. And yeah, so that is all that I have to say about this episode, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.